This is House Planning Help, episode 357. Hello, I'm Ben Adam Smith, and this is the podcast for you if you're interested in self-build or retrofit. I'm exploring what houses we should be building in the 21st century and trying to break down the major roadblocks that may get in our way. Coming up in this session, my guest is Judith Leary-Joyce, author of The Beginner's Guide to Eco-Renovation. We're going to hear about her retrofit of a Victorian end-of-terrace property and the book that followed. And I must say a quick thank you to one of our hub members, Henrik, who flagged up this one, Judith's TEDx talk. And this is called How You and Your Builder Can Save the Planet. Because as you're going to come to understand, Judith is really enthusiastic and has done a lot for a long time when it comes to the environment. But I was also quite pleased that having put that idea on my ideas list, clearly Judith's ears were burning because then she got in touch with me. So that made that one easy. So let's get into our interview then with Judith Leary-Joyce. When Jonathan Porritt started Friends of the Earth, Judith was one of the first members. And similarly, she was an early member of Greenpeace. Over the years, she's tried to take care of the environment in any way that she can. And I think we're going to hear this come out in some of the habits and lifestyle choices that she's made and has embraced. I started by asking Judith to tell me about her home and plans for a whole house retrofit.
So we've lived in this same Victorian end of terrace since 1979. We've done about 4 big renovations on it. So it's entirely different now and is often called the TARDIS. It keeps going on and on. But it came out of one of those discussions, I'm doing air quotes here, with my husband, who we were building an extension, wanted to open all the way through to give a big open plan. And I was against that because it uses so much energy to heat areas that you don't need. And that was out of my climate concern, that we need not to be using any more energy. We need not to be using anything that digs up more from the ground than we absolutely have to. So then we started to think about getting an eco-architect to design the extension. But as we were just in the middle of being a complete building site, we realised that doesn't make any sense because we're sticking a really good eco-build on the back of a leaky house. And then after a long night of the soul, many lists, we came out saying, no, we want to make the house a legacy for the future. We want whoever comes into this after us to still not be damaging the earth. So it came from that really, but it builds on years and years of working to green my life. So a plastic vigilante won't fly, changing investments, driving electric, everything we could think of. We've taken one step at a time over the years to get greener and greener, and this was just the next step. But then it was very exciting when we got into it because we didn't know what we were doing. So I had to start learning about it, and that meant hours on the web, discovering lots of new things, talking to any expert that would listen to me and answer my questions, and develop this absolute passion for it because it's a complete win. It's a climate win. 21% of UK emissions comes from leaky homes. In the UK, every home built before 1990, I understand, needs a retrofit. If everybody working on their homes retrofitted as they were going, we could make a big dent in those emissions. And you gain. Your house is worth more, you save money on bills, everything is good. So it's climate action without sacrifice. So I got really excited then, as you can hear.
It sounds like an interesting moment on the house, particularly when you've gone through other renovations. But I suppose I'm also interested in all these things. You've talked about being passionate about the climate and all the action that you can take. You don't get all of that at once, do you? It happens very gradually, and I always think I can learn from everyone that I meet. So I'm intrigued almost that you must have gone through a couple of smaller projects before you realised that you wanted to do this big one.
Oh, yes. Well, we've done big extensions. I mean, 15 years ago, we gutted all of downstairs. When the kids went, we decided we were going to make a grand pad, an elderly version of the bachelor pad. And we would only have what we loved. And we did all of that. But the things I know now, when I look back, we didn't understand air tightness. We didn't understand about using PIR. We didn't really understand all of the retrofits that would have made the house much more energy efficient years ago. But as you say, it takes years. And I'm a great believer in, if you look at everything at once around climate, and it's getting worse and worse and worse, I can get into paralysis. I get into my eco-warrior and I can't do anything. So my way of managing over the years has been to take one thing at a time and get to be like an eco-warrior about that. So working out how do you live without buying anything in plastic has been a few years of working and developing my ability to cook everything that I would normally go out and buy in a plastic package, and just refusing anything. If we can't buy it other than in plastic, we don't have it.
And do you actually manage to do that 100%? Because I know how hard that is.
I would say 90%.
Well, that is brilliant.
Yeah,
just from markets and things like that.
Yes, going to the local garden centre where they have all the veggies out of plastic. But also you can go to the supermarkets, and some of them are better than others, but you can get fruit without plastic. So it's just choosing those. Bananas is the one that absolutely makes me incandescent. Why would you buy bananas in a plastic bag when nature has given them a perfectly good wrapping? I mean...
Well, sometimes I wonder whether it's to differentiate between products. So if you put all the bananas there and some of their fair trade, that's the only reason they want to do it. They don't want people to pay normal banana price for a fair trade banana.
Yeah, well, yes, I hadn't thought of that's probably true. They put labels round, so they can still do it. But you can get most of your veggies and most of your fruit without plastic in the supermarkets, and the local Asian shops here in St Albans are fantastic. They have wonderful fruit, and it's all, well, most of it is from Europe as well. So you can get your avocados there from Spain instead of the supermarkets there from Peru. And so it takes ages to shop, doesn't it, really, when you're looking at air miles and plastic and organic or non-organic. But they also know me now in my local supermarket. I turn up at the counter, the deli counter, with my box for olives. And if we need a bit of cheese or something, I've always got my boxes. And I've discovered one of them chatted to me one day and said, "We call you the olive lady." Because olives are like our sweeties, so I get this big box of olives.
That is brilliant. And by the way, in this conversation, I know we're very focused on the housing, but we're also very much in the mind of everything that we can do. So any knowledge you can share, don't feel it has to be limited to housing. I would like to go back to this moment, which seems like an important moment in the house where you stopped everything, and just question, because I have this struggle that I try to get to people before they do anything, when they're starting to think about what they might do for a project and get them on that learning journey. But why did you end up in this stage? Can you take us back to that mindset? What was going on?
I think one of the things that I've understood about myself is that once I know something, it's like once I know that something I'm doing is damaging to a person or the environment or family or anything, I just can't do it anymore. It's just like something clicks in my brain and I cannot do it. So when this architect was talking to us, we were standing where we're sitting now, and he said, the house will probably be good enough for a heat pump. And we knew we wanted a heat pump. It's like, okay, so now I know, and I'm not going to live in something every day of my life that I know is only just good enough. And I think that John is very good at going along with that. He's learned over the years the only way is forward, really, here. But he's as passionate as I am about the environment and living as lightly on the earth as we can. So as soon as he'd gone, the architect had gone, we looked at each other and thought, okay, we're going to have to think about this. And we sat down in the only room we had at the time was the front room, and that was just full of stuff and dust and furniture, and we just sat with a big sheet of paper and worked through what would it mean. And we didn't understand. The only thing we had as a starting point was the design of the new build, which is where the conservatory was. And that was built with a single brick gap timber frame, wood fibre.
Maybe we need some more details about what age was this house, what did it look like beforehand, and then we can move on from there.
It's 1901 Victorian end of terrace. So it's single brick, suspended floors, very leaky and extremely cold and dark it's been over the years. It sits at the end of a cul-de-sac, so it's got lots of garden up the side and the back, which is unusual in a house like this. It's given us a lot more freedom to extend it and grow it. So what we were looking for was, how do we make it cheaper to run, really, so cheaper in terms of our wallet, but also in terms of the environment. We never expected the results we got, but that's what we were setting out to do. But the main driver was to, first of all, be as light on the earth as we could. Then we wanted to spend as little as we could. Inevitably, we wanted to fit the budget. And then it was about design, because we were always conscious of, there are certain things you can do at the beginning that you can't do later, but you can always buy your sofas or change your lights, or, that can do over time. So it had to be the fabric of the house that came first. And I think we talked till about 2:00 in the morning and worked out as much as we were able to from there. Sadly, the architect didn't really engage in any of that. We asked him in once to ask a load of questions, but he wasn't.
What do you mean didn't engage? What does that mean? Sorry.
I don't think he was that interested in retrofit. So he was interested in the new build a bit, but he didn't grab him the idea of retrofit. So I think there was the opportunity for him to say, look, do you want support through this? And we'd have bitten his hand off, but he didn't, and he wasn't very forthcoming. But I discovered there are loads of experts out there who work in the sustainability area around building who are enormously helpful. And I had 2 or 3 say to me, this is so lovely that you want to do this for the environment. Normally it's because people say they've got to. I remember ringing up when we had the air test. And he said, why is it you've got to do it? And we said, well, we haven't. We want to know. And he was thrilled to bits. So they were incredibly helpful. And there was one guy, James King from Unity Lime, who spent hours on the phone with us. We were buying from him, but he didn't need to put that much time and effort in, but was really supportive. So there are lots of people out there who will help.
Now, it's one thing saying that, but how did you find these people? How do you keep it as a big picture rather than just specific products that might be useful?
Well, that's where my explorations on the web came in, really, because then I had to look at... My mum always said to me, never buy the first thing, look all around first, and then you can go back if you want the first thing. So I needed to look at what are the like insulation materials, for example, that we're using. What's the sort of overall bracket that fits in? And then have we got a good one? That's where we worked primarily from the blueprint that the architect gave us for here. But still I was looking, and I wanted to understand, well, you've got to use a greater thickness of a sustainable material over using a petrochemical-based PIR. Why would we do that? Because that's a bigger effort. And the builders, of course, we had just builders. We didn't have eco-builders. And of course, they just wanted to do what they've always done. And you can go down to the local building yard and get exactly what they want. And we were saying, we've got to order it and it'll take 4 days to come. So that went down like a lead balloon. But looking into it and understanding why it wasn't good to use it. And as I said, once I know something, then I can't use it then. So I just did a lot of exploring. And it's all there on the web. But you've got to know where to look, and you've got to know the terminology to put into Google.
How did you proceed then with your project? What would you say were the big changes that you made from that initial, we're going to open up this space and just do an extension?
Then we had to understand that if we're going to make it all as good as the extension, then we have to insulate all of the external walls. So for us, because we're end of terrace, that meant the big gable wall and the front. If you're mid-terrace, it's not such a big job at all. You're just doing front and back. We sort of understood about airtightness. Not enough when I look back. And we gradually got to the idea of breathability. That was thanks to all the long conversations with James King. Because as an old house, anything before 1930 is going to be breathable build. So we had to be breathable, and to understand why. And why they call it breathable, I do not know. Vapour open, much better, much better. So we started just by continuing through on we've got a sort of kitchen, sitting area, kitchen and dining room. So we started in the dining room. And we were just about to start. We were back to the brick in the dining room because you've got to take all the plaster off. And then I woke up one morning, and one thing when you have a husband who has a very creative mind is when you wake up to, I've been thinking, oh no, here we go. What's next? And I've been thinking, while we're doing all this, why don't we take the chimney out? Because that is just a dirty great hole in the house. So the builder came in that morning, and I understand, because they were builders for my daughter who lives over the road. Initially, that's how we found him. But he chatted with them more openly than us, and he said, I go in every morning thinking, oh no, what's John going to have done overnight? So he came in one morning to discover, well, we're going to take this chimney out, Pete. But I mean, he just went with it. He was brilliant, actually. He was really good. So we took the chimney out, and then we did the same process. So at that point, we were really doing what the architect had determined in this new build. We were just replicating it. And then we gradually learned as we went along.
But you had no plans for the whole house. You weren't following architectural plans,
no.
Which would be my general advice.
I know.
Well, you see, this is fascinating. So many people get to the end of a project and think the next one, wow, that's going to be good.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. I think now if I could go back and start again with what I know now, it would be completely different. We might even get to Enofit, but we're not near to that.
But houses, particularly old houses, they do go through lots of changes, don't they? Multiple owners, lots of changes.
Yes.
So you're always battling with that. You've talked about the budget already. That is hard too. So continue the story.
Yes, so we worked in the dining room. We got that right. One thing that we did, we lived through this, which is a whole other story, but the real value of that was that we went round each evening to see what they'd done, and we were checking, was it okay? There were some very significant moments, like when the plumbers had put in pipes in the kitchen, and they had put insulation around the front of the pipe. Whereas if you had a quick look, it was beautifully insulated. But John went and had a really good look, and it wasn't insulated at the back. It was up against a brick wall, so it was a coal bridge. So when they came in the morning, it was, I'm sorry, you're going to have to take that out so you can insulate all the way around. And when we were putting in the Pavaflex, the wood fibre in the dining room, when they'd gone at night, we were stuffing up all the cracks and making sure that it was right. And when it came to under the floor, because we've got suspended floor, so we've got a subfloor void, we decided, we'll do this ourselves. And John, again, I've been thinking, worked out how to do it. And we later discovered on Ecological Building Systems that he'd worked out the right way to do it. He was thrilled with that. So we did that ourselves. So we've got 100 mil of wood fibre, I think it's 100 mil, under the floors, which has made an enormous difference. So that was quite fun to get our hands dirty as well. We left the front room to begin with because we were living in that. Once we'd done the dining room, we were starting upstairs. They were also extending a bit of the bathroom to give us a bit more shower space in the bathroom, but also a cupboard for all the air source heat pump. So they were everywhere, really. In John's study, we went back to the brick, took out the chimney breast. All of that was shored up in the roof. We didn't do our bedroom, so we did everywhere but the two front rooms. And we cut the thermal envelope around that to begin with. So that was our first round. That was the biggest round. And we've got a hallway that we've added on previously, which is a conservatory, and that's always was cold. So this time we put on a double glazed internal door, which has made the world of difference. So it is like walking from outside to inside through that. So that was our first iteration. So new bathroom, air source heat pump put in, insulated all the way round, airtight as much as we understood at the time, and breathable. Then once we'd got and we were living comfortably, we had somewhere to be comfortable, we then took on the front room. So that was in the summer afterwards, after all the big stuff. We did the front room and we could cut that off from the rest of the house. So that was a bit easier. We had the old front door as a tilt and turn triple glazed window. And in there, because we've got the Victorian bay window, we wanted to keep that shape. So there, by this time, I'd learned about diathanite, which is a thermal plaster that can be put on to any thickness that you want. It's insulating plaster. And there I was helped by, there's an architectural group in Oxford, Claire Nash Partners, and they specialise in retrofit. And I'd heard her give a talk on a podcast. And so I took a punt and I wrote to her and said, could you help? Because I couldn't find any ideas of how to do the front wall, because if we did the same thickness with the wood fibre and the wood framework, it would be very difficult to do around the bay. So I wrote to her and she very kindly had a long conversation with me and said, why don't you look at diathanite? So I went looking up diathanite. And then, of course, there's finding somebody to put the diathanite in. It needs somebody who does lime plaster. And if anybody listening to this wants a new profession in the building trade, lime plaster, because they're few and far between. They're like hen's teeth. But we finally found somebody and they came and did the front room. We did under the floor in the front room, and then we could move into there. The thing that I haven't mentioned through all of this is that purely by chance, again, just mooching around the web, I came upon the fact that you need a lot of ventilation. And nobody had said that to me along the way. And I didn't know, and I fell over heat recovery single room ventilation units. So then started to look into those, rang up the people. If you ring up companies that sell things like this and press the button for tech, they're not trying to sell you anything. They're normally people that really understand and love their products and the whole sustainability area, and then they'll talk, and they're fantastic. They're so helpful. So I rang up a couple of different providers of these. There were only two main ones at the time. And we tried one, we then tried another, and we've changed those around. But we now have heat recovery units in every room.
So this is something that I haven't come across many times, decentralised ventilation. How is it designed then? What process did you go through, or is it just install one in a room?
I think you're getting the feel of this now. It was pretty much that, yes. We initially got one for the kitchen and one for the bathroom. If you talk to the tech people, they will ask you what's the size, the area that you want to cover, and they will then talk to you about what's the best machine to serve that area. So they want to know the size, number of people in the house, all that sort of thing.
So size of the whole property, or because if you're just doing one room, so it will only be effective for one room?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Although we also, when we got someone to come and fit one of them, he said the one we were putting in would have done the whole of the downstairs. He said, I think 2 would work in this house, but I didn't trust that. So I thought it was better to go more rather than less when it comes to ventilation.
Well, again, it all sort of links into the airtightness and how airtight it is, because I'm sure they become more effective, and then they might only, work well in their specific room. But that's where I was interested anyway.
Yeah.
That's something I think I must write down for a podcast episode in future.
Lovely.
I'm wondering about how you engaged with the builders and what you did yourself, and whether you gave yourself a role in this, or was it just a bit of everything?
It was probably a bit of everything. I would now advocate very seriously that homeowners educate themselves and become part of the building team. Because if you want to do anything sustainable and retrofit for energy efficiency, the building trade on the whole are not very well informed about this yet. And I think that the more homeowners say, I want this, then eventually the building trade will get engaged and will get on board. I've seen that with a few builders around here. My daughter had a retrofit done and we talked with the builders, and then somebody else came to them shortly afterwards and said, we want a retrofit, and they've really got into it. So I think once they see that there's an opportunity, and I don't understand, it's a great sell to a customer. If, okay, so you want to build this extension, if I can make your home 3 times more energy efficient, would you like me to do it at the same time for not very much more money? I mean, why isn't that a brilliant sell?
And with my own builder, they became passive house specialists after the project. But I think part of the reason was they could see the quality. And like you're saying, if you're delivering something with quality, I think most builders want to do that. Sometimes they're rushed, or they don't have the money because things have been stripped back. So it's quite interesting that I think you're right, opening up this market. Would you have any tips for people searching for tradesman or a contractor?
Well, I think it goes back to educating yourself, and that is why I wrote the book that I wrote, because at the end of it I thought it's bonkers that everybody else has to go back to square one like I did. So it took a lot of time and a lot of learning. We did this all through COVID, so there was time.
Before you wrote the book, did you do a search for other books on retrofit and see what was out there? Was there anything out there that was published when you first began? Not very much at all. And the first difficult encounter was to understand that we were retrofitting. I mean, it sounds silly now, but I just kept looking at renovations. And I fell over the word retrofit one day, and then the world opened out in front of me. And that was the moment where I thought, I have to write about this afterwards, because I have written before. So I have to write about this because people just need to know. There are some words you need to understand, and then you can find anything you're looking for. So uncovering retrofit was mind-blowing. I did a podcast at the National Self-Build and Renovation Centre recently, and they have a renovation section, but I was chatting to Harvey, the manager, and he said, well, we're spending quite a lot of money on a new retrofit section. So that's encouraging too, isn't it? Oh, it is. It's very encouraging because so many people don't understand what it is. That's my mission now, is to help people understand this. You can do this. I wanted people to get the basic information written in a way you can understand, because I had to plough through lots of technical stuff. I'll say I got about 10% out of it. Marvellous stuff, I know, but I just needed something written in plain English with the basics that you need to understand, like what's the difference between the insulations, things like what's U value, because if you go to buy windows, they'll throw U value around. You won't necessarily know what it means or what you're looking for. So just all that basic stuff, so that people can read it easily, take it in, and then they've got enough information to either go searching or to have a decent conversation with the builder. And they're confident enough when a builder says, well, we can just go to the yard and get PIR, to say, no, I don't want that. Especially in older houses, that won't work because it's not breathable and we'll end up in trouble. Do you talk much about process? Because I imagine if you'd gone to Claire, she's been on the podcast before, as your first encounter, then you might have got that knowledge through, it might have been a lucky encounter, like you said, you were doing that, but you didn't have your word retrofit. But that's one reason why I spend quite a lot of time talking about Enefit and Passive House, because it's a well mapped out process, and you can't really go wrong. If you've got those words there, again, sort of key words, even if you don't go all the way necessarily, it's a holistic process. Yes. It would have been lovely to do that. I feel, for me personally,
there's been a real benefit that we didn't discover that, because it's opened up a whole new process for my life, really. So this is my legacy work now. I'm retired and my life is given over entirely to persuading people to think about the environment and sustainability when they're working on their homes. And especially, I think, because I'm just an ordinary homeowner, I live in a perfectly ordinary, very familiar Victorian house. I love the idea of passive houses, and I've got a friend who lives in one, so I've been able to go and experience. They're fantastic. But there's not that many people who will build passive houses, but there's loads of people living in houses like ours. And so I just really want to get the message out that you can make your home energy efficient. You'll be more comfortable, you save money, and you help the environment. It's a simple message. So in some ways, I'm glad I didn't. If we had, it would have been much easier. It would have been quicker. It would have been more effective, even more effective, I think. But I wouldn't have had to learn. I would have handed over. And I think with builders, it's very tempting to go into that parent-child sort of relationship where the builder says, you've got to do this. And you say, oh, okay, yeah. And you say, well, it'll hold us up if you don't. Yeah, okay, we'll do it.
Well, it's funny how that relationship can change, because it can be anyone. It can be the person who says, do it this way. It can be the client.
Yes.
If you put your foot down and just say, it's going to be like this, and you might be getting it completely wrong, and they'll say, fine, let's just build what you want. You're paying for it. Or it could be the architect.
Yes.
You know, this is not stunning enough. I want this.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
It's a power dynamic that works in all different ways. But you just, another thing to understand that can happen. And ideally, hopefully, everyone's talking and agreeing on what is the way forwards.
That's something else that I talk about, is that once you get the builders in, or when you're looking for a builder, it's like going in any new relationship. And it's going to be lovely to start with, and it's going to get difficult, and it'll probably be about money. It'll always happen. So you've got to be prepared to sit down and have the tough conversations. I think as you said that, it made me realise we got to the bit where the builder was doing what we said to do. He was delightful and he was very helpful. They all thought we were a bit bonkers.
You hear this quite a lot as well.
Oh, they all thought, they were a bit patronising. And I did one day, I got a bit fed up, and I said they were all in here doing and making jokes about us with our wood fibre insulation, and I just got the finger out and said, you are going to have to get on board with this. This is going to happen. It's in your profession. Learn from this. And then I put the kettle on. But I fed them well all the way through, so they were well fed, and
that is a master stroke.
We got on very well, and the builder is just coming to the end of a project of his own where he's building a house that he will then sell. But he was in one day, because we still see him, he came in and he was saying, oh, you'd be so proud of me, Judith. I've put in masses of insulation. I said, oh, it's excellent, Pete. What are you doing about ventilation? He said, I thought I wouldn't bother. There's trickle vents. I went, oh, Pete, there's a very good book written about this. Go and read it.
And that is also a danger, really, because I've seen this a couple of times. When that happens, that we get bad press from it. So energy efficient homes, it's you've got the side of air tightness and insulation and all the various building physics side that makes up you feeling comfortable, but the ventilation and control of moisture is just everything else. It's a big picture, and
it's very rarely talked about when in the press. When we read things about insulation and making the home energy efficient, they never talk about ventilation. We had horrible, but a good learning. We put something behind the sofa in the front room. You know that thing? It was a table or something. We put it behind there for now, and then we forgot it for about a year. And we moved it all out, and it had blocked the airflow, and there was just a whole colony of mould behind there. So that was, I took pictures of it and I've blogged about it, say, look, this is embarrassing, but this is what happens if you block the airflow. So we've got a single room unit in there, but because this was behind a sofa up against the front wall that's even insulated, is going to be the coldest wall in the room, it was blocking the airflow. And so you can see it. We produce so much water, we've got to keep the air moving.
So going back to our decentralised system. I realise, I think you've got some monitoring going on at the moment for super homes. So that's one thing we can't lean on just yet. But say, for example, air quality. Have you got rid of all your mould, damp problems of drafts? Have all of those things left you?
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. We didn't have problems with mould because the house was so drafty. It was wonderful Victorian ventilation, you know.
But what do you do with things like washing? This is what...
Yes, absolutely. Because underfloor heating, and it was one of my worries. I used to dry on the radiators, but now it's mainly underfloor heating. We've got radiators, but we never use them. And I was worried about the washing. But the heat recovery units really help. So I either put them in the back on a clothes dryer in the back bedroom or in here in the kitchen. So the combination of the underfloor and the recovery units, and drying, we haven't seen any mould or not that we know of.
That's what you want.
We're
That's what you
fine.
want.
Yeah.
And you did mention an air tightness test. Can you remember the result from that?
Oh, I can, because it was a 9, which we were very upset about.
9?
I know.
0.9 or 9 air changes per hour.
It was 9, I think.
9 would be building regulations.
That's right. And it was very helpful. We're so glad we did it. And we did it towards the end, but there was still time because we realised that underneath all of the units, it wasn't airtight. We hadn't done the floor in the front room well enough. We found all the places. But since then, we've done a whole lot of stuff. So it was at a point where we could go back and work on it again. We've yet to get it done again. So we had a long list. And this is where the experts coming in really helped us, that we could see, OK, so we haven't understood enough about this. We need to go back and do it. So we retrofitted the retrofit.
I've heard this too. I've heard this story before.
Yeah, so we're hoping it'll be a lot better. Fingers crossed. There's still a few little bits and pieces.
What about messages in the book then? What are the key things that you'd want to tell yourself or someone else coming into this? Oh, I found the word retrofit.
I think the key message I would want to give is that you can do this. It's possible to do, particularly if you're already working on your house. It's a no-brainer. It will cost a little bit more to do it with sustainable materials, but if you think bigger picture and if you think the grandchildren, then it's a no-brainer. And that it will make an enormous impact on your energy bills and your comfort. So we were always cold in this house. Even on a sunny day, I would be wearing a cashmere jumper and I'd go out and everyone's in their shorts. It was an extremely cold house. It isn't cold now. It's really comfortable. We're saving 75% of our energy usage. Our EPC's gone from a D to a B, and we hope that we can move that up because we've got extra solar coming soon. That's the next project. And we've had the house valued by a couple of estate agents locally. One who didn't understand what we'd done and just wanted to know where the internet points were. The second one did understand what we'd done. His dad was a builder and he was into sustainability and understood, and he priced it at least 90,000 more than the other guy. And he said this would be a very special sale. We would do a weekend open house and then I guarantee it would be a bidding war. So what my message is, there's nothing to lose. You will be comfortable, you will save money, and you will be helping the grandchildren.
And what about the TEDx talk then? How did this come about?
I've always had TEDx on my list, you know. And it was the first conference in St Albans. I'd written the book by then and I really thought, come on, Judith, you've got to apply for this. You know, I am driven by this. It isn't always things I really want to do, but I feel, come on, you've got to do it. Get on with it. So I put in an application. I had applied once before in my previous work, nothing to do with retrofit, and I hadn't taken it seriously enough, so I didn't get it. And so this time I knew, OK, I've got to settle down and do this properly. And I wanted to talk about the retrofit, the message I've just been talking about this is worth your while. But then as I was driving to the audition, suddenly something clicked in my brain that actually the message is about the role we take as homeowners in the building process. That it isn't just about you can do this and then hand it over to the builder. It's get involved, folks. You'll get a much better result if you get involved, and you'll know your house much better. And so I just changed the whole thing at the last minute and did that and got in. And there was one of the people on the panel was really into the environment and wanted to do her own home. So I thought, oh, great. Yes. I'm going to be all right here. So, yes, they asked me to do it, and it was a great experience.
And did you get any feedback from that or from the book?
There was not as much immediate feedback from the TED as, well, all of us had hoped. You know, you get this thing about I'm going to go viral. What it did for me was, again, that drive that I've got to do something about this. It really made me think, okay, if I'm going to make anything of this talk, and having gone through all of that, I want this to be useful. I want it to do its job in the world. Then I have to get onto social media and I have to get over myself. You know, I'd been doing half-hearted posts, and one of the other speakers was very good. I went over and had a coffee with her. She was good on social media, and she said, you've got to get on Reels and you've got to get on YouTube. So I came, as I drove home, I thought, right, okay, this is it. Don't be so daft, just get on with it. So it really pushed me on that, and that has opened up another whole new world. So just getting the book out into the world, that's the main driver. So as many people as possible can get this book, at the beginning preferably, but anywhere along the way, and whatever you're doing, just get the book. Get enough information so you're informed and you can make good choices, and then whatever you choose, that's up to you. But at least you know, and you've got the information to give you the basics.
Is there anything else you want to mention about the house before we perhaps broaden it a little bit?
One of the things that because I run open house sessions, open house tours through the winter. I'm going to be doing them every month because they've been so popular, they always book out. So I just have 6 people at a time and we go around the house. I use pictures of what it looked like, because of course you go to an eco house, there's nothing to look at. John's made a lovely model of how to insulate under the floor, and they're lovely fun. One of the big questions is an air source heat pump, and people are concerned, as I was, about the noise. And our provider very kindly arranged to take us to hear one. And that put our minds at rest. So we were always going to go ahead, really, but I wanted to put my mind at rest. And I would say, if you're thinking about a heat pump and you're disturbed by the stuff you see in the press that say they're noisy, they're expensive to run, I would always say, go and see someone and talk with someone who's got one. Believe them over believing the press. And there is a website now called Visit a Heat Pump. So you could find somebody in your area, and I've had a couple of people that have come to see me for that. But I don't find the noise a problem. We sit under it in our main living area, and I always used to hear the central heating going on and off anyway. I don't think it's any more than that. And to always remember that on the coefficient of performance, for every unit you put in, with gas, you get 0.95 of a unit out, something like that, I think. With a heat pump, you'll get between 3 and 5 units out for every one. So it is going to be energy efficient. You need to have a reasonable amount of insulation in the house, and it is going to work. I mean, we bought the big radiators that they told us we needed because it runs at a lower temperature. In actual fact, we never switch them on, and we heat this 3-bedroomed end of terrace on the heated floor in our sitting area of the kitchen and the 2 towel rails upstairs, and that's all we have on. So a heat pump does work, but go and speak to people who've got a heat pump rather than believe in the Daily Mail.
I think it is becoming more and more common anyway. So hopefully a lot of these things, particularly that noise one, comes up a lot. Just broadening out now, we started by talking about how you've changed all sorts of things in your life. And I always think your home is one of the things you can control a bit, your home, your garden, the surrounding areas. So have you done anything else relating to this space that you would say is in line with the environment, doing your bit on your own space that you're a guardian of?
Well, I think the whole thing about how we eat, that the sort of thing you mean?
Yeah, it can be anything.
Yeah. So how we eat, I've been a vegetarian for 50 years, over 50 years, but recently we're eating primarily vegan. I saw a wonderful article in Veganuary where the journalist said, I don't do this every year because I think I can't do it properly, but I've decided this year I'm going to be half-arsed vegan. I thought that's brilliant. So even if you can only do something half-arsed, do it. So we're half-arsed vegans, sort of 80% of the time, for the climate. We drive an electric vehicle. We've helped our kids get electric cars. So as a family, we've got a clutch of cars. So if you go on a long journey, you take the better car, But that's made a big difference, and I love driving it. I won't fly anymore. I have flown. I've flown a lot more than I should have done. But
So when you say anymore, what does that mean then for time away, holidays and so forth? What are you doing, or are you not?
we use trains. Go on the train. It's great fun. The European train journey is brilliant. So we've done a couple of really long train journeys, but make the journey part of the holiday. So we went to Athens through Eastern Europe one time, but we took 9 days. So we went to Vienna, Budapest, Bucharest, stayed with a friend in Bulgaria, Thessaloniki, down to Athens. We've done going to Spain, southern Spain on the train and the boat. So you can go all sorts of places. If Ukraine hadn't happened, we were going to do the Moscow run from Paris to Moscow. So there's lots of things you can do, and there's lots of places in the UK that we haven't yet visited. I know people will fly, but I feel now at my age, I've done a lot of flying, I've done a lot of travelling. If there's journeys that have to be made, it should be the young, it shouldn't be me now. So I won't do that. Again, it's back to that thing, I couldn't go into an airport now because I know. I sort of knew before, but I could put it on one side, but now I know. We've changed our financial investments. So we're losing a lot of money at the moment, but that's... This is
what I find as well when you're buying products. Sometimes if you try to do your best, it's the most expensive product. But sorry, you were saying financial investments.
Well, the financial advisor says, well, if you would invest in oil and gas, no, how can we do that? And saying, I thought I'd get an electric car when they got a bit better. How long do you think we've got? Do it now. Yeah, so, and the plastic thing, I am a plastic vigilante, and trying to get that into the head of my grandkids. So at the moment it gets to be a little bit, I couldn't show Granny that, but you have to get the balance with little kids about how much you scare them, don't you? But how much you've got to get the message across that you need to pay attention to that. So my bigger grandkids get taken on marches and all sorts of things. I'll march, whatever. So anything that I can think of, if there's things that other people do, I'd love to hear what's the next thing, And I think you just take on one thing at a time, get it under your belt, congratulate yourself, then move on to the next thing.
Well, Judith, it's been lovely to meet you, and keep up the good work. I wish you well.
Thank you very much. It's been lovely to talk with you.
Head online to take a look at the show notes that accompany this session, houseplanninghelp.com/357, where you can review the key points. We always give you a summary that you can reflect upon. There are photos from Judith's retrofit. We'll also link you to that TEDx talk we were talking about earlier. And more importantly, if you're doing anything to your home, get a copy of Judith's book. It's called Beginner's Guide to Eco Renovation. If you type that into Amazon, it will pop up. Or if you type Judith Leary-Joyce into Amazon, it'll pop up. Or if you just visit our website, we will point you in the right direction. If you've got a comment or you'd like to ask a question, you can either head down to the bottom of the show notes. There's a place to get interactive there, or social media, whatever tickles your fancy. houseplanninghelp.com/357. My call to action now is to check out the Hub, and this is our membership community that we run at House Planning Help. We've got a new training that's gone into our library. This is with Tom McSherry from Build Store, and completing a project really makes you feel good when it's all done and dusted and everything's happy. Running out of money halfway through, that's the reverse situation, and at all costs, we want you to avoid that. I've seen it firsthand. It's not pretty. So Tom McSherry from Build Store explains borrowing, how that's going to work, how it's different from a conventional mortgage that you might have when you buy a house. You draw down in stages. It's a stage payment mortgage, and often you're paying interest only through the project. Then at the end, you'll switch mortgages again to something more conventional. So all of that's in our Hub live training archive. We've got our in-depth video case studies. Since we've had Judith on, let's mention another retrofit project. This was one that we filmed through the entire renovation, or should we say retrofit now, of a Victorian property in Oxford. That's Guy Hargreaves' project. Really interesting for me as well, having covered a lot of new builds, to then see this retrofit and some of the additional challenges that it throws up. We've got our courses. We've got Ask the Expert. There's Office Hour if you want to chat with me, and our members only forum. Find out more at houseplanninghelp.com/join. That's it for today. Thank you so much for being there. The House Planning Help podcast is produced by Regen Media, content that matters.